Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Charles, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, and entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things. And we see them. And today we got a pretty interesting show for you guys that we definitely want you guys to stick around for. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, about 2 or 3 days ago, and depending on where you've been, we produced the show, and in this show we were reacting to some comments that Dominique Wilkins had to make about what JJ Redick was saying as it pertains to basketball from the 80s, players from the past, talking about Larry Bird, saying he wasn't really a great shooter, talking about how he doesn't really see the differences in physicality between the game then and the game now. So Dominique Wilkins was on NBA Sirius Radio, XM Radio, and they asked him to kind of give his take on what JJ Redick had to say. And when it was his time to speak, he definitely didn't mince words. And he basically said that he thought it was embarrassing that a former NBA player was saying what he was saying. He said, to use some of his words, that it was quite stupid for him to say those things. Well, apparently, JJ Redick also has a show called the JJ Redick Podcast. He caught a whiff of what Dominique Wilkins had to say. And just over the weekend, or just yesterday, I believe it was, he took the opportunity to respond to some of the things that Dominique Wilkins was saying. So what we want to do is we want to play what JJ Redick had to say here, and then we're going to come back quickly and react to what he had to say. So take a listen to his comments and his response.
How did disrespect Larry Bird? I questioned the narrative around physicality. I said, for every montage video you can show me of Larry Bird being in a headlock underneath the basket, I can show you a montage video of him shooting open jumpers, of him coming off pin downs. Yeah, I could show Steph the same way. I could show Steph getting held. I could show Larry getting held. It's like, it's all basketball. He's one of the greatest players ever. He's also one of the greatest shooters ever. Like, that, to me, is also an indisputable fact. It's not throwing shade to say somebody's not a top 5 3-point shooter. And the trope that every old talking head uses, Mad Dog, Stephen A, physicality, right? It's fine. My entire point about the segment was that outside of fouls, hard fouls, and fighting, the physicality, the basketball play-by-play, the physicality is not that much different than today's NBA. But it's become such a talking point that people take it as gospel. And the reality is, from my lens, from my eyes, when I watch older games, there's not a discernible difference between Michael Jordan in the post now versus Jokic in the post now. The idea, though, that I'm like disrespecting older players for questioning media narratives around that era, that's not disrespect. What I said then, what I've said 15 or 16 times since then on the podcast, on ESPN, players should be celebrated. We should congratulate greatness for that era. The greatest players of every era, whether that's Wilt, Jerry West, Larry Bird, they would be fine in any era. And one of the pushbacks on that comment is always today's players wouldn't be fine in the 80s and 90s. So of course I'm going to push back on that narrative. That's what it comes down to. It is not a knock on, dude, Dominique Wilkins he was awesome. Larry Bird was awesome. Jerry West was awesome. Bob Cousy was awesome. I don't actually enjoy comparing eras. Like, I got asked about it on First Take when LeBron broke the record. Who's the greatest player of all time? And it's like, well, Jordan said it best. Gave an interview with Mike Wilbon in 2009. I can't say I'm the greatest player of all time. I didn't play against Wilt. I didn't play against Jerry West. I don't know. The better question is, who's the greatest player of a generation? Who's the greatest player of an era?
You heard what he had to say there. Now, I think it's important that I say from the onset, I'm on the side of the players from the past, right? Because I think a lot of what we see today in the NBA is diluted. I think guys are overhyping the product that we see today on the court. And I think players of this era want this to be the best era because it's the era they played in. And I think that the argument of, oh, these guys want the past to be the best, I don't really I think the past was actually the best. And even the ratings will suggest that as well. But one of the things that he said was some of the tropes that were used in the past. Well, what about some of the tropes that are used today? Some of them are players today are more skilled than ever before. And the two things that they point to say that are, number one, their ball handling ability, which is emphasized more today, and their ability to shoot threes, which is also emphasized more because they take more threes. Another thing that they say is players are more advanced today. Another thing that they say that players are more athletic today, even though I don't know how they measure these things. Another thing that they say is the talent pool is greater today. Once again, something I don't really know how they substantiate this. And whenever I ask for people to kind of substantiate that, they really do. Now, if you talk enough, you may end up kind of getting yourself in trouble. What do I mean by this? As you know, with the advent of social media and video and technology and all of this today, it is given all of us a platform to really say what we think. And now more than ever, players are really, taking advantage of these new mediums that we have in place, and they're out there, getting their voices and opinions out. And a few months ago, funny enough, Kyle Kuzma went on The Volume, which was Draymond Green's show, right? I think it's owned by Colin Cowherd, if I'm not mistaken. And what I want to do is we want to play a video for you that shows exactly why the game was more physical in the past, but Draymond Green did so unwittingly. He didn't realize that as a matter of fact, that's what he was doing. So what we want to do is we want to play a brief conversation between Draymond Green and Kyle Kuzma talking about the differences of eras. Take a listen to that short soundbite there, and then we'll come back and react to it. Take a listen to that there.
All right. But I'm watching it, and I couldn't help but say, I just don't understand how you can compare us to this team.
Right.
Not that Michael Jordan isn't great or the greatest player, or however you want to slice it. It's not taking anything away from that.
Right.
Not one bit. But just the style of basketball alone, I mean, there's a guy catching it at the free throw line, a guy cutting to the corner, and a guy flashing to the post.
Right.
There's no spacing. And so I'm watching that, and I'm like, the point that I was making was, you see what I'm saying? We'll beat this team by 20 and we'll beat them by 40. The actual point that I was making is, and that's why it's dumb to compare eras.
It's dumb. And then it's also play styles and it's officiating. Well, are we going to play with hand checks or are we going to play freedom of movement?
Facts.
Right? There's certain teams that can get away with certain things. Like, I believe if the Showtime Lakers, they would dominate this era because they were, I was watching Magic in the 80s, just highlights like earlier in the summer. People don't realize, he was fast. No, he was fast as hell. Like, he was getting the rebound up the court in 3 dribbles.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you guys paid close attention, you would notice a few things. He was talking about why he believes that the 2017 Warriors would beat the 98 Chicago Bulls. I don't know why he picked the 98 Chicago Bulls. Why didn't he pick the 96, but whatever. Why they would beat the 98 Chicago Bulls. And one of the things he spoke about was what? The lack of spacing. The lack of spacing. Now, when you have a lack of spacing in the half court, what generally happens? The thing that happens is it creates more opportunities for more physical contact because there's less space. Players are bumping into each other, throwing elbows into each other's chests as they flash across the paint or the lane or whatever it is. And therefore, the game becomes more physical because there's less space. And to Kyle Kuzma's point, there's no what? Freedom of movement. What's the opposite of freedom of movement? meaning you're able to grapple players, you're able to hand check players, put your hand on players. So if you're able to do all of those things, help me understand, how is the game less physical? How do we do this? How does it work? This, you see, there's this kind of thing out there that's kind of being propagated around media, which is this. And we got to be careful about something. Just because you didn't do a particular thing, therefore, you aren't capable of understanding it. The NBA, or professional basketball, is something that very few of us are going to have the opportunity to experience. The vast majority of us that watch these shows are not going to be able to play in the NBA. The vast majority of us. But that does not mean that just because we didn't play in the NBA, it doesn't mean that we can't understand the concepts and understand what we're seeing in front of us. It's an insult to the question is, what would exactly make you feel that way? What would make you feel that way? People can understand it. You can analyze it from afar. I give you guys another example of what I'm talking about. I'm a very big fan of Formula One. I'm already hooked into this next season, right? Now, am I a mechanical engineer? No. Am I electrical engineer? No. Am I an automotive engineer? No. Have I ever put a car engine together? No. I've never done any of those things. I couldn't tell you all of the various components that go into an engine and exactly what makes a car work. I couldn't tell you any of those things because I've never done them and that's not my field of expertise. However, if I took the time to understand what exactly is happening within a car, what's causing it to go around a corner a particular way, how does the aerodynamics have an effect on the car? What does the driver's abilities have to do? All of these different things. If I took the time to understand it, over time, I will be able to get a grasp of what the hell is going on. It doesn't mean that I will now all of a sudden become an automotive engineer or turn into a team principal. No. But it doesn't mean that I cannot understand what is happening based on my ability to be able to reason, based on the fact that people are quite smart in general. So therefore, I'm able to understand it and follow what the hell is going on and ultimately appreciate it. Appreciate great driving. Appreciate all of the technical skills that go into making that sport the most technologically advanced sport in the world. So just because you played in the NBA, it doesn't mean that therefore you are like an authority over the matter and no one else can understand it. No one else. And finally, I'll close with this. Again, just because you're an NBA player, it doesn't mean that what JJ Redick is saying, or just because JJ Redick is a former NBA player, it doesn't mean what he's saying is true. And I'll prove it to you. Because if it was only based on the fact that just because he played in the league, it makes what he's saying true, then why is Dominique Wilkins disagreeing with him? Didn't Dominique Wilkins play in the NBA too? I rest my case. Catch you guys on the next show. Peace.